Hey guys, welcome to Pancreas Pals. Emily here.
And Miriam.
Welcome back. We're back from our hiatus.
We're
I
back.
hated that I sang that, but it felt like it needed to happen. I don't know.
It did. That was very reminded me of Alana from Broad City.
Oh my god,
No,
that's
she's always sings
honestly
random things.
that's true. I'm gonna take that as a compliment.
It was.
I love her, but
1,000%.
also she in Broad City, her character is very stressful. Moving on, guys, welcome to us. Welcome to our lives. This episode's really just a catching up because we've been MIA for a hot minute. For those of you who don't follow Miriam on social media, she has moved states.
I have moved states. Yes, I was going
to say. It's
tragic
for me to make it all about me, even though I'm sure Miriam's sad to leave like the million of people she actually sees in New York, but I am devastated.
No, it's very weird. Even though we've been recording remotely from each other for so long, it does feel weird being in a different state, in different time zones. It's funny, I was saying the reason we've been on hiatus is because both of our lives have been kind of in chaos for a little bit, but Emily reminded me, don't call it chaos, life is just in flux. And so, I don't even know if you remember telling me that, but you did.
I didn't until you just said that.
And I've been using that. I've been telling that to everyone when they're like, how are you? I'm like, life has been in flux. It does sound a little bit better than chaos, and I think it's an excellent descriptor of how things have been. So, like I said, I moved from Brooklyn, New York to Houston, Texas.
Big move.
Very
different vibe.
Very big move. Very different vibe. It's for my husband's job. He's doing a year of advanced medical training in Houston. So we made the big move. And Emily, share your announcement.
Well, as Miriam so thoughtfully pointed out, I started a new job as a senior editor at Prevention Magazine, which is a health and lifestyle magazine owned by Hearst. It is a monthly magazine, and I'll be doing all things a senior editor would do. So top editing, writing, helping guide the writers of tomorrow. I hate myself. That was a total joke. But I decided it was time for a change. I loved my time at Martha, but this has, if there's anything Pancreas Pals, the community and Pancreas Pals, the actually work that Miriam and I do in producing this podcast for you has taught me, it's that I love health and wellness, and even though I might not always be well or healthy, it's something that really speaks to me and ignites that passion I have and never shut up. So I'm really excited for this role, and Miriam was like, oh, they're gonna be like, she got another new job, and I was like, Miriam, let me live my life.
I meant that out of love.
As she did, but it's true, people in media roles tend to move around a lot.
They do, and I respect Emily because it's like the hustle. You're always hustling. You're always finding like a better fit, a better opportunity, a better just
I hope to stay at Prevention for a long time.
I feel like this is a good fit for you.
I'm really excited.
It's gonna be more rewarding and just
more up my alley. I mean, I loved my time at Martha, and honestly, like, I already really miss the team. Everyone on the team is so amazing. I just really wanted to lean into more of a health, wellness, beauty space, and I couldn't do that in my last position. So really all good things, but definitely in flux. Took a little bit of a pause personally because Miriam was moving, and there's no way in hell that we were both going to be able to find time to record during that. B, I still wanted Miriam to be an active co-host, and I rather just, take a month pause than fill in with some very special pals that it just didn't feel as necessary, because honestly, we're all living our lives this summer. It's Vax to Girl summer. No one told Delta variant, but that's where we are. It's not really Vax Girl summer for me anymore. I'm now like scared girl summer again, but we don't have to get into that.
No.
We'll
do our best to not make this another COVID episode, but it's hard to avoid. But I think we were both just very stressed this summer, and I said, I'm so sorry, Emily. I cannot think about anything besides like bubble wrap and cardboard boxes, so I'll need to put the podcast on pause for a bit, but I made it in one piece, as did all of my stuff. So now
And her blood sugar.
And my blood sugar, stable enough. So we are back
That's
on
been my blood sugar mantra of the summer.
Stable
enough. It's been I've had a time with diabetes the last month and a half. I had my first real kinked pod. I've had a kink, an insulin pump where, a kink is where, for those of you who do injections or maybe are pancreatically capable, basically the tubing in my pump got bent. And when it's bent to a certain degree, you don't get insulin, which, kind of takes you back to your diagnosis and how awful going into DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis, things like that. I luckily did not reach DKA. I don't want anyone freaking out about that. I'm fine. But, I had a bad few weeks, honestly. I was fine, but I just kept I had a sensor failure from my Dexcom. I had 3 pod issues for my Omnipod. And then on top of all that, changing insurance, because when you're 27 and your parents, you can't be on your parents' insurance anymore, for those in the US. For those literally pretty much anywhere else that's listening, I'm sure you have nationalized health care, so that's neither here nor there. But yeah, that kinked pod really
they screw you up. And it's hard because sometimes your pump will kind of identify it and will kind of alarm.
It usually does.
But then every once in a while it doesn't, and so it's those are the worst. I mean, when you keep bolusing, keep waiting for it to come down, and then
also because I was at Matt's cousin's wedding in Queens, and I'd had I wasn't drunk, but I literally had one drink, and usually after an hour that sends me going down, and I was 240, 250, 260, 300, 3 whatever, and I was okay, now I need to go change my pump. So I did. I changed my pump and I saw that it was kinked, but then when I put on a new pump, which by the way I only brought one extra pump because I'm pretty neurotic, but I'm not that neurotic to bring a freaking box of pods. Plus it wouldn't have fit in my cute Brahmin bag, so sue me. But I changed my pump and I hit a vein. And I was it hurt really bad, but it was my last one. And
yes,
I was
you had to make it work.
But also my blood sugar, the blood from when it inserted blocked it. So again, my blood sugar didn't go down. It was a series of unfortunate events. And Matt is just this is such a testament to all the partners and loved ones of people with type 1 diabetes. Matt was so chill. He was let's go home. And I was no, they're about to bring out dessert. And meanwhile I actually have some moderate ketones, which really isn't that bad considering the fact that I didn't get any insulin delivered for literally 5 hours. But yeah, that was it was just a series of unfortunate events between that and multiple Dexcom sensor issues. I'm sure if you follow us on Instagram, you've seen one of my many. I only go on Instagram now to complain about my very privileged asses. I can't. All I do is complain about my Dexcom or my Omnipod or health insurance.
Not complaining, you're venting.
Yeah, and I also feel it's a safe space. Anyone in the pal community can
relate.
Yeah. But also, I do think that a lot of us have a lot of tips and tricks.
Yeah.
So, when I'm my Dexcom's 100 points off, what the hell is going on? I got a million DMs being this happens to me too. But then half of those DMs were this only happens when I wear it on my stomach. Try it on your arm or things like that.
Or people I learned from... I call her Nerds Can Fight, but Marie from Nerds Can Fight on Instagram. But I learned from her that sometimes, when you get those sensor errors or the question mark things on Dexcom sensors, she's sometimes it just means I'm dehydrated. So if I start drinking a lot of water, the readings will come back. And I was
no way.
Oh my God. So granted, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that was a good tip.
That's a really good tip.
Yeah, you telling me about this I literally forgot about it till just now. And when this happened, I was oh my God, I have to tell the Pancreas Pals. But before we moved, we went up to Steven's, my husband's parents' house, my in-laws' house, for a night or two to kind of, drop things off at their house before we moved and see them, whatever, our last hurrah. And I knew the first night we were there that my Dexcom was set to be expiring. So I brought one extra Dexcom sensor with me. And again, trying not to be too neurotic. Normally, I would pack like 3 because I'm crazy. And I kept saying, listen, I'm only like
you're not crazy. You've had the lived experience. You've been burned, Miriam.
So I only brought 1. And for some reason, and so this is an aside, but lately my Dexcoms have like not been working well on my stomach. And I love putting them on my stomach. That's my go-to spot. Lately,
Same.
like without fail, by day 6 or 7 of my sensor period, I'll start getting a bunch of errors. I'll get inaccurate readings. It'll just be like a lot of like blank readings, like without fail whenever I put it on my stomach. So I've just started really putting them on my arms. When you're putting the sensors on your arms, sometimes it's like an awkward angle and there's kind of crazy. And for some reason, when we were at his parents' house, my Dexcom had just expired. I was getting ready to put it on my arm and I had this thought like, oh shit, I really hope this isn't one of those sensors that like goes in weird or has an issue because I don't have any backups. So I put it in, and have you ever had it where the sensor applicator won't come off?
Yes, I've had that twice and it is so painful.
It's so frustrating. So I've only had that one other time and I was able to kind of maneuver it and shake it around and it would pop off. But this one on my arm, nothing. And I remember having seen other people on Instagram what they did with it. Like I remember specifically
like Jillian,
it, right?
T1D
chick. Yeah. She like slaps it with like a wooden spoon and it kind of like releases the whatever's stuck in the applicator. So the applicator will kind of pop off. Nothing. So I'm like trying to hit it with things. My husband's like whacking it with a spoon. Like we are trying.
At least
everything.
You weren't home alone. It happened to me when I was home alone once.
It's crazy. So we are trying like crazy. Like it will not budge. So I like had to give up. I pulled the whole thing off. I was so frustrated because it was also this was like at 11:30 at night already.
No,
it was one of those nights where like I had ice cream. I had like a carby meal.
You needed,
like,
you felt like you wanted the extra help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I needed a Dexcom that night. I wanted the comfort of the Dexcom that night, and it was just like bad timing. And I was so frustrated because I only brought 1 when I normally bring like a million extra. So it was like not a good night. And for whatever reason, I hadn't pulled off my old Dexcom sensor yet. Usually I pull that off, I wipe it off, and then I put on a new one. For some reason, I went out of order. I put the new sensor on, which obviously didn't work, but I kept my old one on. So now I'm like, if this was back on an old Dexcom, if this was like the G5 sensor, G4, I could just restart the sensor session, no problem. It was always so easy with those. G6
the good old days.
The good old days. G6 makes it very hard to kind of trick the system and restart a sensor. But I Googled because type 1s on the interwebs are so freaking smart and have tried everything and have all these tricks. And so there's a million tricks of like how to try to make it work. So I was able to pop the actual transmitter out of the sensor site. The sensor site was still on my skin. I was able to pop it out, which was very challenging because normally you have to break it off kind of. But I was able to pop it off, cleaned it up, waited like 5-10 minutes to kind of let everything like relax. I had stopped the sensor session on my Dexcom app, and then I put the transmitter back in that old sensor site. I started the new sensor, what do they call it? Like a new sensor
warm up.
I started a new warm up. When it asked me for the sensor code, I just said no code, and it worked. I'm like blown away. I would not count on that. I don't think it always works, but for some reason it did. And I'm so grateful. It was not a particularly accurate sensor session, but it was better than nothing.
But it got you through.
It got me through. It was better than nothing, and I was very proud of myself.
I'm impressed. I'm proud.
It was just like a comedy of errors. I felt like everything that could go wrong did go wrong, but like
honestly,
thank God
that's like
I kept the old sensor site on my skin. So that
was
my big exciting adventure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you made it through. I'm also glad you had stove there because I was home alone and I had done it. I can't remember the situation, but the applicator got stuck, like it didn't release. And when you first put on the adhesive, or like when you first put on a sensor, the adhesive is very strong as it needs to be. And you basically need like the jaws of life to pry it off of you. Yeah. So I had like this is like probably a little late in the show for a trigger warning. So here's your warning, a little bit of a disgusting explanation of events. But I literally had like a hole in my stomach from having to yank it out. Ugh. Because I couldn't get it to release at all. I tried everything. And for some reason, also like at that point, honestly, I was calm. Like I was panicking at first because it hurt and like also what. But yeah, so I had to rip it off because the adhesive was so strong. And I like kind of got the edges up a little bit, but the actual part around the catheter, no, not catheter, I can't remember the
wire.
Yeah, whatever, the tube, thank you, I can't speak. The tube is so strong. Obviously that's the only time it's at its strongest. Like 2 days later, I'm sure it was like hanging on by a thread. Exactly. And I'm like, why couldn't I have done this then? But that was like I had to rip it off. Luckily it like wasn't a bleeder. It just really hurt, and I had like a bruise that looked like I had lost a battle with something sharp. But it was definitely a time. I don't want to scare anyone who has been wanting to try one of these devices.
Oh my gosh, no. Like 98% of the time they are perfect. Right. And even honestly, like when this applicator got stuck, I wasn't in pain. But I think the needle had like released, so the needle wasn't in me anymore, but the applicator itself like wasn't releasing from the sensor. And funnily enough, I don't know if it was like a bad box of sensors or something, because funnily enough, the next sensor I put in at home, the same thing happened. But that time I was able to, whack it with a wooden spoon and it released. But I've had that happen like
mine got stuck with the needle in me.
Ugh, yeah, that one's painful. I've had this happen like in my years of Dexcom, which I don't know how many it's been. I've had it happen 3 times, and 2 of them were in like a 2-week period. So I think it was a bad box or something.
I was diagnosed in 2014, so I'm like 7.5 years into diabetes, and I've only had this happen twice. And again, like this is really only possible on the G6 because the other applicators
was very different.
And honestly, like those hurt. In my opinion, those hurt way more.
Totally
like I used to have to brace myself to insert. But so like, the grass is always greener. But I'm still obviously super appreciative and # blessed to have this stuff. But when our technology goes wrong, I mean, I was having my physical last week. This is your reminder to go to your doctor, even if it's not COVID related. So to everyone who's been putting it off for a year and a half, now's your reminder. Just do it. But I was at my GP, and she was asking about my blood sugars, and because every doctor wants to know about it, even though you have a specialist who's an endocrinologist. But like, happy to share. I love talking. So I was like, yeah, it's been pretty good, whatever. I had like a bad week with all these sensor and insulin pump issues. And she was like, what kind of issues? And I was like, oh yeah, I had 2 pods that were leaking and 1 pod that got kinked, like one tube that got kinked. And she was like, oh my God, it never even occurred to me that these devices could also accidentally inhibit someone from getting their insulin. And I was like, yeah, it's not a perfect science. And she was like, that's so disturbing to me to think that my patients are actually giving themselves insulin, but they're not getting it. And I was like, yeah, like I love my GP. She's great. And they don't really have to deal with this level of stuff. A lot of I don't want to blanket it. A lot of other forms of diabetes don't necessarily need or use insulin pump therapy. So I think
they're just not familiar. And I think if they do that, even if it was type 2, they would probably refer to an endocrinologist.
Because at the end of the day, specialists are specialists for a reason. But yeah, I just kind of was like looking at her. I was like, yeah, I know it sucks. And like just seeing the like compassion on her face. And I was like, you're preaching to the choir here. Like it's, sometimes I feel like I have months where diabetes just feels a little bit more effortless. Maybe not months, weeks. And then I'll have like a really bad month where it's like, no matter what I do, things go wrong. And then I ultimately end up feeling like crap. And it's like, I still, to this, even though I've had diabetes for 7.5 years now, sometimes I forget. And I'm like, why do I have such a bad headache? Like, what the hell? Like, and Matt will be like, oh, like, how's your blood sugar? And I'll be like, huh, that's a good question. And it'll like be during my Dexcom warm-up period, or my Dexcom will be like 30 points off, which is all too frequent, and that's the difference between like a 50 and an 80 reading. So obviously I'm gonna feel the effects way worse when I'm at 50 as I would at an 80 blood sugar. So yeah, he like, I just feel so lucky to have these great people around me, but it just kills me because he didn't even know me before I had diabetes. But like here I am, like it's the first thing he thinks of, and I'm like, I feel like this.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the opposite. I'll be like, I feel like shit, but my blood sugar is fine. I don't understand. And Stephen will be like, maybe you're just like dehydrated, like normal.
At least you have a doctor to talk to, though. Like, I'm like, well, what do you know, Matt? Like, if I have software engineering questions, I'll hit you up. But otherwise,
but sometimes it's like I forget that, like, oh yeah, we can. Besides diabetes, other normal human ailments can also occur to us. It's, I think it's my instinct to assume everything is diabetes related sometimes when, it isn't always.
Right. I mean, the same thing kind of goes with like my time of the month. Like anything that I forget is reoccurring. I'm like, oh, why do I feel this way? But then half the time I attribute things that are definitely not to that. Yeah. And I had my first migraine about 3 weeks ago. Ugh. Yeah, I have to, this is another issue. I have to go to the doctor for that soon. I've never had a migraine before. To anyone who suffers from migraines, holy crap, so much love to go out to you, because I literally almost like threw up from such a bad headache. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm sure it has 90% to do with all the screen time.
Screen time and stress and flux. the previously mentioned flux. But
so
ouch.
It's always something. But it's a wild time. But at least this is so your reminder to go to your doctors, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that diabetes will always be there. Hopefully it won't be, but as long as we keep the other things in mind, it'll be it's more manageable. I'm sorry, my parents are in town right now because they partially moved to New York, and they're sending me pictures of my dad having a cocktail, looking so happy. Aww. It's hysterical.
That's
little
cute.
Nathan.
Cute.
Yeah.
I guess I can talk. I'm trying to think what else we went through, but I guess I could talk about like moving my diabetes supplies, because that was like a new.
Yeah, because you guys drove too. You drove to Texas.
From New York to Texas, which was long. It's like 25 hours of driving time. My husband and his friend drove with a moving truck. I kind of flew to the halfway point, which was in Atlanta, which is where my parents are. So I flew there, and the moving truck met us in Atlanta. So I had to figure out like supplies and my insulin. So knowing that my insurance was likely going to change, and my New York insurance was really excellent. I had excellent coverage for insulin and supplies and everything. So I really like replenished all of my supplies and all of my insulin before I moved, just in case, because I don't quite know how the coverage will be with this new Texas insurance.
Definitely recommend doing that anytime you change insurance ever,
just
or
to
jobs
kind of
or anything.
cover your bases. So I had a lot of supplies, but I also had a lot of insulin. Supplies I was less concerned about. I can throw them all in a box and like be done with it. The insulin I was very nervous about, because that's a lot of driving time, and I had a lot of insulin. I'm very lucky that my doctor over-prescribes how many vials I actually need, and my insurance actually covers it. They kind of cover it, whether it's 3 vials or 10 vials, they will cover it for the same copay. So we try to max it out as much as we can. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But that led to having a lot of insulin in my fridge and figuring out how to get it. So there probably are easier ways to do this. It was a lot of insulin, and I was very nervous about flying. Even if I put it in a big cooler, like I knew TSA would allow me to take it. It's medication. I have the prescription. Like I know TSA wouldn't like take my insulin, but it was so much. I honestly just wasn't sure I'd need like a massive cooler. And I just logistically, I couldn't figure out how to bring it on the plane to Atlanta. I couldn't figure out how to get it from Atlanta to Houston. It was just stressing me out. So what I ended up doing is I purchased I get most of my prescriptions and insulin through like mail order pharmacies. So my insulin gets, I think a lot of people do that. So my insulin gets mailed to me, and it always gets mailed to me in this like styrofoam cooler thing with all of these ice packs around it. And it stays super cold. It's like super effective. So I went on Amazon. I found these like styrofoam cooler boxes. I bought a ton of ice packs, like gel ice packs that say they stay solid for like 48 hours. And so I did that. So I packed a massive styrofoam box. I did it like with 12 little gel ice packs. I put all my insulin in there. I packed it all up. It was good to go. I shipped it from New York to my parents, overnight shipped it. We were laughing. So Steven like came to me to the UPS store to like ship it off, to set it up. And the UPS guy was like, "What is the value of the items in this package?" And Steven was like, "Well, do you have insurance or no?" And the guy laughed, but we were like, "It's medication, so it's a lot."
You probably had like
$30,000. That's a lot, but at least $3,000 worth.
I stockpile too. Obviously not letting things expire. Like I use what I have, and will honestly donate what I can.
Yes.
But I probably have at least $20,000 worth in my fridge right now.
It's crazy.
Because if you think about it, like that's what, like, I mean, $1,000 for a 3-month supply for me. So yeah, I have probably at least a year's worth. I'm not good at.
Oh, that's crazy. I have like,
I have a lot.
I shipped like between 15 and 20 vials probably. And I had Lantus, I had, Humalog, I had LimeJet. Like, I've tried all the different types.
Yeah. I don't even have that. I just have my Novolog or Humalog vials.
No, I always have Lantus as like a backup in case my pump malfunctions. But I had a bunch. So we laughed because he was asking. And it was a lot. It was expensive because the box was heavy and I was overnighting it. It was like over $200 to ship it.
It's still a lot cheaper than having to restock.
And Steven was like, "Is this worth it?" I'm like, yeah, like for peace of mind. I just wanted to get it there. I wanted to get it there overnight. So that was successful. My parents received it the next morning. They said the ice packs were still like rock hard. Everything was cold. They immediately put it in the fridge. So like we were good to go. So then when I got to Atlanta, and we were getting ready to drive from Atlanta to Houston, then we like repacked the cooler pack. And it was at that point we were driving. It was like a 10-hour drive basically, that we split up into 2 days. So we packed up the cooler pack again, and it made its way to Houston. Still really cold. So I was very relieved about that. And then
pro tip, you heard it here first.
Yeah. Pay a shit ton of money to ship your insulin.
That's like really, I don't think I would have been able to, I would have done what I had to do, but I don't trust the mail system based on the amount of things that have gone lost.
I would not have done USPS. No offense to USPS. I think they're like an American
I've been
treasure,
burned too many times.
But
they are. I will always support them, but not send medical supplies that way.
Exactly. UPS, I was a little bit more trusting of because they have tracking, they have like insurance, etc. So it worked. And then the rest of my supplies, I kind of split up. I basically put like a month's worth of pump and Dexcom supplies in like a carry-on luggage to keep with me. Because I wasn't quite sure, like, when are we going to unpack everything? When will I have easy access? And then the rest of my stuff, I just, like, packed in one big box, wrote big letters, like, diabetes supplies. And success.
And Steve drove it.
And Steve drove it in the U-Haul. So it all made it here in one piece. We have, like,
when I studied... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we have more storage space in this apartment. So I have, like, 2 full shelves in our linen closet that are just for diabetes supplies.
Love to hear it.
It's very exciting to like organize that. So yeah,
I gotta organize mine. I just have stuff everywhere in my room. It's getting to the point where like it's too much. But when I studied abroad back in 2015, I had to bring 4 months supply of everything. And I actually, what they'll let you do is, I could do this. I think it was like Virgin Air, whatever that. Thing is, like, I was able to alert them that I needed a special medical bag. So I literally packed a duffel bag as a carry-on, and it was just chock full of all my supplies and had like 3 3 lunch boxes worth of insulin and just kept that with me. But there was a big delay and I was freaking out and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do about all my insulin? Like my ice packs are melting. When in reality, I think it would have been fine.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
the stewardess literally got like a vat of ice and just put all my stuff in, like my insulin in there. She was so sweet. I mean, I'd also just been diagnosed 6 months before that. So I was like really freaking out. Also, it completely slipped my mind that everywhere I was going while I was going abroad had nationalized healthcare and I didn't need a prescription for insulin. So
yes. Biggest regret. I should have, because similarly, when I studied abroad, I was trying to remember. I know my parents came to visit me like halfway through my abroad semester. So they brought like a bunch of extra supplies too. We kind of planned for that, knowing like, okay, I'll bring it to get me for the first 3 months and they'll bring me extra. I cannot remember what I did with the insulin. I must have just brought it in like a little lunchbox or something with cooler packs.
I mean, you've been diabetic for 23 years? How long?
25 and a half. And I think in college especially, I was like, whatever. Like I just was so laissez-faire about the whole thing.
The only reason why it sticks out is because I was just diagnosed.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like I think back and I'm like, oh, I went to Israel on birthright. Like, how did I do that? And that was like 3 years ago or whatever. You know what I mean? I can't remember anything. So
exactly. Like, you made it. You didn't end up in a hospital. It must have been fine.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's just the anxiety level that sticks out to me. But also that stewardess's kindness, flight attendant. I don't remember really what the PC thing is to say. On that note, this has been an all over the place episode, but this is real. This is us. Welcome back to Pancreas Pals. We will have some more episodes coming up, but
I have one more request of the pals.
Let's hear it.
Any pals that live in Houston, Texas, first of all, let me know because I'm looking for friends. Second of all,
she's a great friend. I can attest. I'll write a recommendation.
Second of all, let me know if you have any recommendations for endocrinologists. I did get one really good recommendation from another type 1 diabetic that I found on Instagram. So I have an appointment set up with that particular endo that they gave me. But I love hearing other opinions, other options, just in case this one doesn't work out. So if you like your doctor, let me know. But also, just tell me about Houston because I just moved here. And all I know right now is it's really freaking hot.
Yeah, maybe stay in the air conditioning. Yeah. And eventually, if things ever get back to some kind of safety, normal situation, I'm sure Miriam would love to have a meetup with her fellow pals in Houston. Sure. And I'll definitely be hosting some stuff in New York. Yes. If that day comes. I guess I should be more optimistic and say when that day comes.
When that day comes, yes.
So thank you guys so much for making it through this episode with us. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at pancreas_pals, on Facebook at pancreaspalspp. Sign to our DMs on both. We love to hear from you. Also hit us up on our email, pancreaspals123@gmail.com. If you have any story ideas or any recommendations on who we should talk to, what you want to know about, let us know. We love giving you what you ask for. And thank you guys for listening to this episode. We've missed you. And we hope to hear from you soon.
Talk soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.